Trust me, please. Pretend we're together.
Who are you?
Rain hammered the cobblestones as Anna pressed herself into the shadow of the stable wall, her basket of mending clutched to her chest. Footsteps. Fast, uneven, frightened. A boy stumbled around the corner, his coat torn, blood on his knuckles, eyes wild with something between fear and desperation. "Please," he gasped, grabbing her arm. "Pretend you're hugging me." Anna froze. "What?" "They're looking for me. If they see a boy alone, they'll know it's me. But if they see two people, just embracing, please." Before she could answer, he pulled her close, his heart hammering against her shoulder, his breath ragged in her ear. Lantern light swept the alley behind them. Men's voices, sharp and searching, echoed off the walls. Anna held perfectly still, this stranger trembling in her arms, and said nothing. The lantern light passed. The voices faded. Only then did he release her, stepping back, ashamed, grateful, and utterly unwilling to explain himself. "Who are you?" Anna whispered. "Why were they chasing you?" "It doesn't matter," he said. "You saved my life tonight. I won't forget it." He vanished into the rain before she could ask his name. What Anna did not know, what the boy himself barely understood, was that the men chasing him through the mud had been sent not to harm him, but to find him. To bring him home. Because the ragged stranger she had just held in her arms was the missing heir to one of England's oldest dukedoms, and his disappearance was about to unravel a secret that had been buried for 18 years. She would meet him again. And nothing about that meeting would be simple. If you're ready to find out what happens next, drop a like, tell me where in the world you're watching from, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Part 1. Morning came grey and quiet over the village of Bramfield, mist clinging to the hedgerows as Anna walked the narrow lane toward the manor gates. Her basket was heavier than usual, filled with linens to be mended for the great house, and her mind was heavier still. She had not slept. All night she had thought of the boy in the rain, his trembling hands, his desperate whisper against her ear. She told no one. Not even Heir, her closest friend, who worked beside her in the sewing room and could read her moods better than anyone alive. "You're somewhere else this morning," Heir said, threading a needle with practiced ease. "Your hands are here, but you are not." "I'm tired, that's all," Anna answered, though her cheeks warmed at the memory she was trying so hard to bury. Heir raised an eyebrow but said nothing more. She had known Anna since they were children scrubbing floors together in this very house, and she understood when silence needed to be respected. The sewing room overlooked the kitchen gardens, and through the window Anna could see Jocasta, the housekeeper, marching across the gravel path with a face like a thundercloud. Jocasta ran Bramfield Hall with an iron will, and when she was displeased, the entire household felt it before the day had properly begun. "There's trouble," Heir murmured, watching her too. Moments later, Jocasta swept into the sewing room, her keys jingling at her waist. "Girls! Leave your work. Lord Bram has arrived from London, and every hand in this house is needed to prepare for him." Anna's needle paused mid-stitch. "Lord Bram? I thought he served the Duke's household directly." "He does," Jocasta said crisply. "Which is precisely why his visit unsettles me. Men like that do not travel to quiet villages without reason." The name Duke stirred something uneasy in Anna's chest, though she could not have said why. She had never met a duke in her life. Bramfield Hall belonged to a baronet, a kindly but unremarkable man named Sir Walter, whose family had held the estate for generations. The great dukedom that governed half the county was a distant thing, spoken of with reverence but rarely seen. By afternoon, the entire household had been transformed. Extra chairs were carried into the drawing room, silver-polished until it gleamed, and the cook, a formidable woman named Keziah, filled the kitchen with the smell of roasting meat and fresh bread. "Whatever he wants," Keziah said, wiping her brow, "it had better be worth all this trouble." Anna was sent to deliver freshly mended curtains to the east wing, a task that took her past the drawing room just as Lord Bram arrived. She caught only a glimpse through the half-open door, a tall man in a dark travelling coat, his expression grave, speaking in low urgent tones to Sir Walter. 18 years since the boy vanished, Bram was saying. His Grace has grown desperate. If there is any word, any rumour at all of a young man matching this description in your parish, I must know of it immediately. Anna froze in the corridor, curtains forgotten in her arms. A missing boy, Sir Walter repeated slowly. Surely after so many years, my lord, hope must be nearly gone. His Grace does not accept that, Bram said. Not while the boy might still live. Not while there remains a chance he does not even know who he is. The word struck Anna like a struck bell, echoing long after she had hurried away. She thought again of the stranger in the rain, the fear in his eyes, the way he had begged her for nothing more than an embrace to hide from men searching the streets. Could it be the same search? The same missing boy? She told herself it was foolishness. There were 100 missing boys in England, 1,000 desperate strangers running from 100 different troubles. And yet the thought would not leave her. That evening, after her duties were finished, Anna walked the long way home through the market square instead of the shorter path through the fields. She could not have explained why, except that some part of her hoped, foolishly, that she might see him again. The square was nearly empty, lit by the last gold light of evening, when she heard the clatter of hooves and the sharp cry of a man in distress. A cart had overturned near the well, its wheel shattered, its load of firewood scattered across the cobblestones. The driver, an elderly man, lay pinned beneath the broken axle, groaning. Anna ran forward without thinking, dropping her basket. Someone help him! A figure moved faster than she did, appearing from the shadow of the blacksmith's forge, strong hands already working to lift the splintered wood from the old man's leg. Anna recognized him instantly, the set of his shoulders, the low urgent voice, though his face was turned from her. Lift on my word, he told the two men who had gathered. Now! The wood came free. The old man cried out but was pulled clear, alive, his leg bruised but not broken. The small crowd that had gathered murmured with relief, and only then did the young man turn, breathing hard, and see Anna standing there. For a long moment neither of them spoke. You, he said finally, quiet astonishment breaking through his exhaustion. You, Anna answered, her heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with the accident. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. I did not think I would see you again. Nor I you, Anna said. You never told me your name. He hesitated, and in that hesitation Anna saw something flicker across his face, a shadow of the same fear she had seen in the rain. Joseph, he said at last. My name is Joseph. It did not escape her that he had waited before answering, as though deciding whether the names were safe to give. Well, Joseph, Anna said, forcing lightness into her voice though her pulse would not slow, you have a habit of appearing in moments of trouble. A faint smile crossed his face, the first she had seen from him. And you have a habit of being present for them. Around them the crowd was dispersing, the old man carried away to have his leg tended, the broken cart left for the morning. Twilight was deepening, and Anna knew she should be walking home, yet she found she could not make herself move. Are you from Bramfield? She asked. I work where I can find work, Joseph said carefully. A stable here, a field there. I do not stay long in any place. Why not? His jaw tightened. It is safer that way. Anna thought of Lord Bram's words in the drawing room, of a missing boy who might not even know who he truly was, and a chill passed through her despite the mild evening air. Safer from what? Joseph did not answer at once. When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped so low she had to lean in to hear it. From men who have been searching for me since before I could walk. I do not know why. I have never known why. But I have learned that when strangers ask questions about a boy of my age, my only choice is to disappear before they find me. And yet you saved that man tonight in front of half the village, Anna said. That is not the choice of someone trying to disappear. Something in his expression cracked open, raw and uncertain. No, he admitted. It is not. I do not know what is wrong with me lately. Since the night I met you, I have found it harder to run. The words hung between them, heavier than either seemed prepared for. Somewhere behind them a church bell began to toll the hour, and Joseph's head turned sharply toward the sound, old instinct reasserting itself. "I must go," he said quickly. "Wait." Anna caught his sleeve before she could stop herself. "At least tell me where to find you, if I needed to." He looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face, torn between two instincts that had clearly warred inside him his whole life. "The old mill, past the miller's bridge," he said finally. "I sleep there most nights. But Anna, if men come asking after me, you must say you have never seen my face." He was gone before she could ask how he knew her name, vanishing into the darkening lane with the same quiet speed as the night they first met. Anna stood alone in the empty square, the broken cart still lying where it had fallen, and felt for the first time that her ordinary life in Bramfield had quietly, irrevocably, begun to change. Part 2. Anna did not sleep that night either. She lay awake staring at the low beams of the ceiling, turning Joseph's words over in her mind. "Men who have been searching for me since before I could walk." She thought of Lord Bram's grave voice in the drawing room, the missing boy, 18 years, and the terrible cold thought that would not leave her alone. What if they were the same story? By morning she had decided to say nothing to anyone. Joseph had trusted her with a secret that could put him in danger, and she would not be the one to betray it, not even to Heir. But keeping silent proved harder than she expected. At breakfast in the servants' hall, Jocasta swept in with fresh instructions, her face tight with the particular strain of a woman who had been given an impossible task. "Lord Bram wishes to have the parish register searched. Every birth recorded 18 years past. Every child unaccounted for. He believes the boy may have passed through this village as an infant." Keziah nearly dropped a pot. 18 years is a long time to go looking for a baby who is now a grown man. "His Grace does not care how long it takes," Jocasta said. "The dukedom has no other heir. If the boy is not found, the whole estate passes to a cousin the Duke despises. Lord Bram made that quite plain." Anna kept her eyes on her plate, her appetite gone entirely. "What happened to the boy?" Heir asked. "How does a duke lose his own son?" Jocasta lowered her voice, glancing toward the door as though the walls themselves might carry gossip further than intended. "They say there was a fire at the Duke's hunting lodge 18 years ago. The boy's nurse fled with him in the chaos and was never seen again. Some say she died in the woods. Others say she sold the child to protect him from enemies within the Duke's own family. No one truly knows." "Enemies?" Keziah repeated. "What enemies does a Duke's baby have?" "The kind who profit when an heir disappears," Jocasta said grimly, and said no more on the matter. Anna excused herself as soon as she could, claiming errands in the village, and walked with quick determined steps toward the miller's bridge. She told herself she only wished to warn Joseph, to tell him the search had grown closer, that men were combing the parish records for boys his age. She told herself it was only kindness. She found the old mill exactly where he had said, its wheel long since stopped turning, ivy claiming the stone walls. Joseph sat inside on an overturned barrel, sharpening a knife with slow, careful strokes, and looked up the moment her shadow crossed the doorway. "You should not have come here," he said, though there was no real anger in it. "They are searching the parish records," Anna said, breathless from walking fast. "A man named Lord Bram has come from the Duke's household. They believe the missing heir may have passed through Bramfield as an infant." Joseph's hand stilled on the knife. For a long moment he said nothing at all. "You knew," Anna said quietly, watching his face. "Didn't you?" "You already suspected." "I have always known something was wrong with my life," Joseph said. "I was raised by a woman who was not my mother, in a cottage 3 villages from here, and she died when I was 12 years old without ever telling me who my parents truly were. Before she died she made me promise never to speak my birth name to anyone. She said it would bring men to my door who wished me harm." "What was your birth name?" He looked at her for a long moment, weighing something behind his eyes. "I do not remember it. I was too young when she took me." All I have is a single object she left me, wrapped in cloth, which she said I must never sell no matter how desperate I became." He reached beneath his collar and drew out a small ring on a leather cord, old gold, engraved with a crest Anna did not recognize, a hawk clutching something in its talons. Anna's breath caught. "Joseph, that is a nobleman's seal." "I know what it looks like," he said, tucking it quickly away again. "I have known for years. I have simply chosen not to believe it, because believing it means my whole life has been a lie, and because men have hunted me since I was a child for reasons I never understood. If this ring is the reason, then perhaps it is safer buried at the bottom of a river than worn around my neck. Or perhaps," Anna said gently, "it is the reason a grieving man has spent 18 years searching for his son." Joseph's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought she had pushed too far. Then his shoulders sagged, all the fight draining out of him at once, replaced by something rawer and more frightened than she had seen from him before. "What if I go to them," he said quietly, "and I am not who they hoped? What if I am simply a poor boy with a stolen ring, and they discard me the moment they realize their mistake? I have survived by disappearing my whole life, Anna. I do not know how to be found." Anna knelt beside the barrel so their eyes were level. "Then let us find out together. Quietly. Carefully. Not by walking into that manner and announcing yourself to strangers, but by learning the truth before anyone else has the chance to decide it for you." Something in Joseph's expression softened, gratitude and disbelief tangled together. "Why would you help me? You barely know me." "Because you asked a stranger to pretend to hug you in the rain rather than let yourself be caught," Anna said, "and instead of running the moment danger passed, you stopped to lift a broken cart off an old man's leg. I know enough." For a moment neither of them spoke, the old mill silent around them except for the soft drip of water somewhere in its broken machinery. Then a new sound reached them, boots on gravel outside, more than one set, moving with purpose. Joseph was on his feet instantly, every trace of softness gone, replaced by the wary stillness of a creature who has survived by sensing danger before it arrives. "Someone is coming," he whispered. Anna moved to the narrow window and felt her stomach drop. Two men in the Duke's livery were making their way down the lane toward the mill, one of them carrying a folded paper, the other scanning the tree line with sharp practiced eyes. Behind them, unmistakable in his dark traveling coat, walked Lord Bram himself. "They have found the mill," Anna breathed. "Someone must have told them. Or they have searched every abandoned building in the parish," Joseph said grimly. "It does not matter which. I cannot be seen here." "There is no other way out," Anna said, glancing at the single door and the narrow broken windows too small for a man to pass through. Joseph's eyes moved rapidly across the room, calculating, and then fixed on the old grain chute at the back of the mill, a steep wooden channel that had once carried sacks down to waiting carts below. "That will hold my weight if I am fast." "Joseph, wait." Anna caught his arm, her heart hammering. "If this is truly your family searching for you, running again only delays what must eventually happen." "Then let it be delayed a little longer," he said, "until I know whether I am walking toward a family or a trap." He hesitated only a moment, his hand covering hers where it still gripped his sleeve. "Whatever happens, Anna, do not tell them you have seen me. Please." Before she could answer, the mill door creaked, and Lord Bram's voice called out from the threshold, sharp and commanding. "Is anyone within?" Joseph was already moving, swinging himself into the old chute, disappearing downward in a scrape of splintering wood just as the door swung fully open and Lord Bram stepped inside, his sharp eyes sweeping the empty room and landing, finally, on Anna standing alone beside an overturned barrel with her heart pounding loud enough, she was certain, for every man in the room to hear. Part 3. Lord Bram's eye settled on Anna and did not move away. He was a tall man with a narrow, weathered face, the look of someone who had spent years reading truth out of liars and had grown tired of the effort it required. Behind him the two men in livery filled the doorway, blocking any thought of escape, though Anna had no intention of running. Running would only confirm whatever suspicion already sat behind Lord Bram's steady gaze. "Forgive the intrusion," he said, his voice courteous but firm. "I did not expect to find anyone here. I often walk this way," Anna said, keeping her voice as ordinary as she could manage. The mill has been empty for years. I sometimes come to gather kindling from the fallen wood. It was not entirely a lie, and she hoped the smallness of it would keep the colour from rising in her cheeks. Lord Bram studied her a moment longer, then let his gaze travel slowly around the room, taking in the overturned barrel, the scattered shavings of wood near the grain chute, details that seemed to catch and hold his attention longer than Anna liked. Someone has been living here, he said, more to himself than to her. Vagabonds, perhaps, Anna offered. The village has seen a few this season. One of the liveried men crossed to the chute and peered down into its dark opening, testing the old boards with the toe of his boot. Anna's heart climbed into her throat, but the wood held firm, and after a moment the man straightened and shook his head at Bram, finding nothing. We are searching for a young man, Bram said, turning his full attention back to Anna. Roughly 18 years of age. He may not know the truth of his own birth. If you have seen anyone matching such a description, a stranger to the village, unfamiliar, perhaps carrying himself differently than the boys born and raised here, I would ask you to tell me now. His safety may depend upon it. Anna forced herself to hold his gaze. I have seen no such person, my lord. It was, she told herself, the truth as far as it went. She had seen Joseph, yes, but she did not know, not with certainty, that he was the boy Lord Bram sought. She clung to that thin distinction as though it might keep her conscience clean. Bram studied her a moment longer, and something in his expression suggested he was not entirely convinced, though he had no proof to challenge her with. Finally he inclined his head. If you should see such a person, you may send word to Bramfield Hall. There would be a reward for information, but more than that, there would be a family made whole again after 18 years of grief. I hope you will remember that, should you ever find yourself in a position to help. He turned and left the mill without another word, his men following, their boots crunching away down the gravel lane until the sound faded into the ordinary hush of the countryside. Anna remained frozen where she stood for a long moment, waiting, listening, before she finally allowed herself to breathe. Joseph, she called softly toward the chute. They are gone. There was a scrape of wood, and a moment later Joseph climbed back up into the mill, dust and splinters clinging to his sleeves, his face pale beneath the grime. He crossed to the window and watched the empty lane for a long while before he spoke. A family made whole again, he repeated quietly, echoing Bram's words. He made it sound so simple. As though 18 years could be undone with a single conversation. Perhaps it could be, Anna said. You do not know until you try. I know what happens to men who trust too quickly, Joseph said, and something old and weary crossed his face, older than his years. The woman who raised me told me once, before she died, that the people who wanted me found were not always the people who wished me well. She never explained further. She only made me swear to be careful. Anna considered this, turning it over. Then let us be careful. But careful does not mean hiding forever, Joseph. It means learning who can be trusted before you show yourself to anyone at all. He looked at her, something shifting behind his eyes, gratitude tangled with a fear he could not quite release. You keep saying us, as though this is now your trouble as well as mine. Perhaps it is, Anna said simply. You saved a man's life in the square without a moment's hesitation. I do not believe a person capable of that deserves to spend his whole life running from his own name. For a long moment neither of them spoke, the silence between them different now, warmer than the fear that had filled the room only minutes before. Then Joseph reached for the ring beneath his collar, turning it slowly between his fingers as though seeing it for the first time. There is a woman in the next village, he said finally. Eloria. She was a friend of the woman who raised me, and she has always known more than she has ever told me. I have asked her about my past before and she has always turned the conversation aside. But perhaps, if I bring her the ring, and tell her what has happened here today, she might finally speak. Then we should go to her, Anna said, before Lord Bram's men search every village between here and the coast and find her first. They left the mill separately, Anna walking ahead through the fields while Joseph kept to the tree line, old habits of caution too deeply worn to abandon even now. They met again at the crossroads beyond the village, where a narrow path led toward the neighboring parish, and walked the rest of the way together as the afternoon sun slid lower through the branches overhead. Eloria's cottage sat at the edge of a small orchard, smoke rising thin and steady from its chimney. She was an older woman with sharp eyes and work-worn hands, and the moment she opened her door and saw Joseph standing beside a stranger, her face went the color of ash. "You should not have come here," she said, glancing past them toward the road as though expecting pursuit. "Not with her. Not with anyone. They are already searching, Eloria," Joseph said. "Lord Bram himself came to the mill today. I cannot keep pretending this is not happening." Eloria's hands trembled as she reached out and gently drew the ring from beneath his collar, turning it over in the fading light, and something in her expression crumpled, years of held silence breaking loose all at once. "Your mother wore this ring the night she died," she said quietly. "Not your birth mother. The woman who raised you. She was not your nurse, as some believe. She was something far more dangerous to certain people, and far more precious to others." Anna felt a chill move through her despite the warmth of the afternoon. "What do you mean, dangerous?" Eloria looked at Joseph for a long moment, as though weighing whether 18 years of silence could finally be laid down. "Come inside," she said at last. "Both of you. What I have to tell you is not something to be spoken of in an open doorway, where any passing ear might carry it back to Bramfield Hall before you are ready to be found." She stepped back to let them pass, and as Anna crossed the threshold behind Joseph, she felt the unmistakable sense that whatever waited inside that small cottage would change everything that came after, not only for Joseph, but for herself as well. Part 4. The inside of Eloria's cottage was small and close, filled with the smell of dried herbs and wood smoke, and she moved through it with the brisk efficiency of a woman who had spent a lifetime keeping her hands busy so her mind would not wander toward things she preferred not to remember. She set a kettle over the fire, though none of them had any real interest in tea, and gestured for Anna and Joseph to sit at the small wooden table before she finally lowered herself into the chair across from them, folding her weathered hands together as though bracing herself for a task long delayed. 18 years ago, she began, I was a laundry maid at the Duke's hunting lodge, in the northern part of the county. Your mother, the woman you called your mother, was a nursemaid to the infant heir. A boy born to the Duke and his wife after many years of grief, for they had lost 2 children before him and had feared they would never have an heir at all. The whole household loved that child. But not everyone in the Duke's own family shared that joy. Who did not? Joseph asked, his voice low, and Anna could hear the effort it cost him to keep it steady. The Duke's younger brother, Eloria said. A man named Silas, who stood to inherit everything should the infant heir never live to grow. He was clever and patient and careful never to be seen doing anything that might draw suspicion. But your mother, your nursemaid, she was not a fool. She noticed things. A groom dismissed without explanation who had once questioned why the nursery door was left unlocked at odd hours. A physician summoned in the night for a child who showed no signs of illness the following morning. She began to fear that the boy's life was in danger, and she was right to fear it. Anna felt Joseph go very still beside her, his hands pressed flat against the table as though he needed something solid to hold onto. The fire, Eloria continued, the one everyone believed claimed the nursemaid's life along with the truth of what happened that night, was no accident. Your mother set it herself, in the west wing of the lodge, far from where you slept, to draw every eye in the household away from the nursery while she carried you out through the kitchen gardens in the dead of night. She let the household believe you had both perished in the flames, because she knew that only your death, even a false one, would keep you safe from a man determined to see you gone. She gave up everything, Joseph said quietly. Her whole life. Her name. She could never go back. She never once regretted it, Eloria said, her voice thick. She told me so, more than once, in the years before she died. She said watching you grow into a good man, even a poor and hungry one, was worth more to her than every comfort she had given up at that lodge. She only feared what might happen if Silas ever learned the truth, that his nephew still lived. Is he still alive? Anna asked. This Silas? Eloria's expression darkened. He is. and from what little word reaches this village, he has spent 18 years positioning himself as the Duke's most trusted advisor, closer to the old man now than any other living relation. If the boy is found and brought home, Silas loses everything he has spent nearly 2 decades quietly building. I do not believe for a moment that he has stopped watching for any sign that the heir might still be alive. The fire popped in the grate, and for a long moment none of them spoke, the weight of the story settling over the small room like a held breath. Anna glanced at Joseph and saw something in his face she had not seen before, not fear exactly, but the particular grief of a man mourning a mother twice, once for the woman who had died when he was 12, and now again for the sacrifice she had made that he had never fully understood until this moment. Lord Bram does not seem like a man in Silas's service, Anna said carefully. He spoke of a family made whole, of a grieving father. That does not sound like the words of a man sent to finish what Silas began. Bram serves the Duke directly, Eloria said. He has been loyal to the family for 30 years, since before I ever set foot in that lodge. If anyone in that household can be trusted, it is him. But the danger is not only in who searches for you, Joseph. It is in who learns of the search after you are found. The moment you set foot inside Bramfield Hall as the missing heir, word will travel faster than any of us can control, and Silas will know within days, if not hours. Joseph turned the ring slowly in his fingers, the hawk crest catching the firelight. Then what am I meant to do? Hide forever, as she asked me to? Or walk toward a family I have never known, knowing it may bring danger to everyone around me? You are meant to be careful, Eloria said, and clever, which your mother always said you were, whether you believed it of yourself or not. Go to Bram, but go on your own terms, not dragged before him by strangers who found you hiding in an old mill. Choose the moment. Choose the place. And do not go alone. Her eyes moved to Anna as she said this, and Anna felt the weight of that glance settle onto her shoulders like something she had not quite agreed to carry, though she found, somewhat to her own surprise, that she did not wish to set it down. They left the cottage as the light was fading, the sky streaked with the last deep gold of the day, and walked back toward Bramfield in a silence that felt different from the wary silence of the morning. Joseph walked closer to her now, no longer keeping the careful distance of a man used to disappearing at the first sign of company, and once, when the path narrowed near the old stone bridge, his hand brushed hers and did not immediately pull away. I keep thinking of her, Joseph said eventually, his voice rough. Walking out of that burning house with me in her arms, giving up her name, her whole life, so that I might have one. I never understood why she was always so careful, why she flinched at strangers, why she made me promise things I thought were simply the fears of an old woman. She was protecting me from a man I never knew existed. She loved you enough to disappear for you, Anna said gently. That is not a small thing, Joseph. Whatever happens now, whatever you decide, you carry that with you. He looked at her for a long moment in the fading light, something unguarded and grateful in his expression. I do not know how to walk into that manor and claim a life I never lived. I do not know how to be a duke's son. I only know how to be poor, careful, and afraid. Then you will learn the rest, Anna said, the same way you learn to lift a broken cart off a stranger's leg without a moment's hesitation. Not because it was easy, but because it needed to be done. They reached the edge of the village as full darkness fell, the windows of Bramfield Hall glowing warm and distant across the fields, and Joseph stopped at the crossroads where their paths would separate for the night. Tomorrow, he said quietly, I will go to Bram. Not hiding. Not running. I will tell him everything Eloria told us, and I will let him decide whether he believes me. I will come with you, Anna said. I know, Joseph said, and for the first time since the night in the rain, he smiled without a trace of fear behind it. I no longer imagined asking you not to. Neither of them noticed, as they parted at the crossroads, the figure standing in the shadow of the churchyard wall 100 yards distant, watching them both with the patient, calculating stillness of a man who had waited 18 years and did not intend to let a poor boy's sudden courage undo everything he had built in that time. Part 5. Anna woke before dawn, her body tired but her mind already racing ahead to the day before her, and she dressed quickly in the grey half-light, choosing her plainest shawl as though ordinary clothing might somehow make the extraordinary morning ahead feel less overwhelming. She had told no one of her plan, not Heir, not Jocasta, not even her own mother, who still believed she was simply walking to the manor for her usual duties. She had decided that whatever happened at Bramfield Hall today, it was not hers to explain until Joseph himself had chosen how much of the truth the world was ready to hear. She met him at the crossroads as arranged, and the sight of him waiting there in the pale morning light struck her differently than it had the night before. He had washed and mended his coat as best he could, and though nothing could disguise the roughness of a life spent in poverty, there was a new steadiness in the way he stood, shoulders squared, chin lifted, a man who had finally chosen to stop running rather than one still deciding whether to flee. "You came," he said, though there was no real doubt in his voice, only relief. "I told you I would," Anna answered, and together they began the long walk toward Bramfield Hall, the manor rising ahead of them out of the morning mist like something out of an old story, its stone walls catching the first weak light of the sun. Neither of them noticed the man who had followed them from the edge of the village, keeping well back among the hedgerows, his boots silent on the damp grass, his eyes never once leaving the pair walking ahead of him. He was no stranger to patience. He had spent 18 years cultivating it, and he was not about to abandon caution now, not when the boy he had spent nearly 2 decades hoping was dead had suddenly, foolishly, decided to walk himself directly into the arms of the family that might yet restore him to everything Silas had spent his life quietly stealing. At the manor gates, Joseph hesitated only a moment before straightening his coat and walking forward, Anna at his side, and it was Jocasta who first spotted them from the kitchen garden and came hurrying across the gravel with an expression caught somewhere between suspicion and alarm. "Anna, what is the meaning of this?" she demanded. "Who is this young man, and why have you brought him to the front of the house rather than the servants' entrance?" "I need to speak with Lord Bram," Joseph said, before Anna could answer for him. "It concerns the boy he has been searching for." Jocasta's sharp eyes moved over him, taking in the worn coat, the calloused hands, the unmistakable poverty that clung to him despite his straightened posture, and something in her expression softened into something closer to pity. "Many boys have come to this door these past weeks claiming knowledge of the missing heir, hoping for a reward. Lord Bram has grown weary of false hopes." "I am not hoping for a reward," Joseph said quietly. "I am hoping for the truth." Something in the steadiness of his voice seemed to give Jocasta pause, and after a long moment she turned without further argument and led them both into the house, through corridors Anna had walked 100 times as a servant but never once as a guest, until they reached the drawing room where Lord Bram sat at a small writing desk, a stack of parish records spread before him. He looked up as they entered, and his gaze moved first to Anna with faint recognition, then to Joseph, and lingered there far longer, sharpening with each passing second into something between disbelief and dawning hope. "Forgive the intrusion, my lord," Joseph said, his voice steady though Anna could see his hands trembling slightly at his sides. "My name is Joseph. I do not know the name I was born with. But I believe I may be the boy you have spent 18 years searching for." The silence that followed stretched long enough that Anna could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the faint crackle of the fire in the grate, could hear Lord Bram's chair creak as he rose slowly to his feet, his eyes never once leaving Joseph's face. "Show me your left hand," Bram said quietly. Joseph, confused but compliant, held it out, and Bram crossed the room and turned it gently, studying a small faded scar along the base of the thumb that Anna had never once noticed before. "He was burned reaching for a candle as an infant," Bram murmured, more to himself than to either of them. "His mother, the Duchess, wrote of it in a letter to her sister, fearing he would carry the mark his whole life." He looked up, and Anna saw the careful composure of the last 18 years crack open all at once across the older man's face. "Do you have anything else? Anything that was given to you, passed down, that you carried from your earliest years?" Joseph reached beneath his collar and drew out the ring, the hawk crest gleaming dully in the morning light, and Bram made a sound that was not quite a word, something caught between a laugh and a sob, and reached out to take Joseph gently by the shoulders as though he needed to confirm with his own hands that the young man before him was truly flesh and not some cruel trick of hope. 18 years, Bram said, his voice breaking. 18 years I have searched every parish, every county, every ship that left these shores, certain in my heart that you still lived and terrified that I would die before finding you. He drew a steadying breath, visibly gathering himself. Your father, his grace, is a man much changed by grief. He has not smiled in nearly 2 decades. I must ask you to be patient with him, and prepared, for the moment he learns of this may undo him entirely, one way or another. I understand, Joseph said, though Anna could hear the fear still threading through his voice, the fear of a man who had spent his whole life being told to hide and was now being asked to step fully into the light. Bram turned to a servant waiting near the door and issued rapid instructions, a carriage prepared immediately, word sent ahead to the Duke's residence, and within the hour Anna found herself seated across from Joseph in a fine carriage she had only ever cleaned the wheels of, rolling along a road she had walked 100 times on foot but never once travelled in such comfort. You do not have to come with me, Joseph said quietly, watching the fields pass beyond the window. Whatever happens next, it will not be simple, and it may not be safe. I know, Anna said. I am coming anyway. He reached across the small space between them and took her hand, and for a long moment neither of them spoke, the carriage rattling steadily onward while the ordinary world of Bramfield fell further and further behind them. Neither of them saw the rider who had followed the carriage from a careful distance since it left the manor gates, nor the message he carried, folded and sealed, that would reach a certain gentleman's hand within the Duke's own household before the sun had fully set. Silas read the words twice, his face utterly still, and then walked calmly to the window of his study overlooking the Duke's grand estate, watching the long drive where, within the hour, a carriage bearing the missing heir would arrive to shatter everything he had spent 18 patient years building. He was not a man given to panic. He set the letter down, straightened his coat, and began, with the same quiet patience that had served him for 2 decades, to consider exactly what must be done before nightfall to ensure that a boy who had survived a fire, survived poverty, and survived 18 years of hiding would not survive the one night that mattered most of all. Part 6. The carriage rolled through wrought iron gates just as the last light of afternoon spilled gold across the grounds of Everholt Park, and Anna pressed her hand against the window, unable to look away from the sheer scale of the place, terrace gardens stretching toward a lake, fountains catching the dying sun. Beyond it all was a house so vast, it seemed less like a home and more like a small kingdom unto itself. Joseph sat rigid beside her, his hand still wrapped tightly around hers, his eyes fixed on the approaching entrance with an expression Anna could only describe as a man walking toward both everything he had ever wanted and everything he had spent his whole life fearing. Lord Bram, who had ridden ahead to prepare the household, was waiting on the front steps when the carriage finally halted, and beside him stood a tall, gaunt figure in dark mourning clothes, his hair silvered far beyond what his years should have allowed, his face lined with the particular exhaustion of a man who had spent 18 years refusing to let hope die completely. Anna knew, even before Bram spoke, that this was the Duke. Your Grace, Bram said quietly, may I present the young man I believe to be your son? The Duke did not move at first. He simply stared at Joseph as he stepped down from the carriage, his eyes tracing every line of the young man's face as though searching for the infant he had lost among the features of a stranger grown to manhood in poverty and hardship. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked entirely on the first word. Thomas, he said, and something in the name seemed to strike Joseph like a physical blow, though he had no memory of ever hearing it before. That was your name. Thomas Edmund, after myself. Your mother chose it before you were even born. I do not remember it, Joseph admitted, his voice unsteady. I do not remember anything of this place, or of you, Your Grace. I do not wish to give you false hope only to disappoint you. The Duke crossed the remaining distance between them with the halting steps of an old man forcing his body to move faster than it wished to, and when he reached Joseph he took his face gently between both hands, studying him the way a man studies something he has been told is lost forever and cannot quite believe is real. I do not need your memory, the Duke said, tears finally breaking free down the deep lines of his face. I have carried the memory for both of us these 18 years. I only needed to know you still lived. He drew Joseph into an embrace, and Anna, standing a little apart near the carriage, felt her own eyes fill with tears at the sight of it, this broken, grieving man finally allowed to hold the son he had mourned for nearly 2 decades. But even in the midst of that reunion, something cold moved through her, a memory of Eloria's warning of the man who had waited 18 years and would not simply step aside now that the truth had finally arrived. She was not wrong to worry. As the small party moved toward the house, a figure appeared in the doorway, elegant and composed, his expression arranged into something that might have passed for warmth had Anna not already known what lay beneath it. Silas. "Brother," he said smoothly, descending the steps to greet the Duke. "Word reached me only this hour. What extraordinary news, after all this time." His eyes moved to Joseph, and though his smile did not waver, something calculating flickered briefly behind it, gone almost before Anna could be certain she had seen it at all. "You must forgive my caution, but 18 years have taught this family to be careful of false hope. How can we be certain this young man is truly who Lord Bram believes him to be?" "The scar on his hand," the Duke said. "The ring his mother wore. I do not require further proof, Silas." "Of course," Silas said, inclining his head, though Anna noticed his gaze lingered on Joseph a moment too long, sharp and assessing beneath its polished courtesy. "Then we must celebrate his return properly. A gathering, tomorrow evening, so that the whole household and the neighboring families might witness the miracle of the lost heir restored." Something in the eagerness of the suggestion struck Anna as wrong, too fast, too convenient, and she caught Joseph's eye across the small gathering, seeing her own unease reflected back at her. That night, given a small guest chamber in the east wing while Joseph was settled nearby under Bram's watchful protection, Anna could not sleep. She rose near midnight and made her way quietly through the unfamiliar corridors, drawn by some instinct she could not fully name, until she heard voices drifting from a study near the library, low and urgent, one of them unmistakably Silas's. "The celebration tomorrow will be the perfect opportunity," Silas was saying to someone Anna could not see. "A crowded room, so many hands offering wine and congratulations, no one will think to question a single cup among so many. By the time anyone notices he has taken ill, it will already be too late, and grief will make fools of them all, too consumed with mourning a second loss to look closely at the cause." Anna's blood went cold. She pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing, and heard the low murmur of a second voice agreeing, before footsteps approached the door and she fled back down the corridor as quietly as her trembling legs would allow. She woke Bram before dawn, breathless, recounting everything she had overheard, and watched the older man's face harden into something grim and resolved. "I suspected as much," Bram said quietly. "I have suspected it for years, though I could never prove it. Silas has been waiting 18 years for his chance, and he will not surrender it easily now that it has slipped from his grasp." He looked at Anna with new respect. "You have likely saved that boy's life tonight. We must move carefully, and quickly." The celebration proceeded the following evening exactly as planned, the great hall of Everholt Park filled with candlelight and silk and the low hum of conversation. Neighboring families gathered to witness the restoration of the lost heir, wine flowing freely among the crowd. Joseph stood near his father's side, uncomfortable in fine clothes that did not yet feel like his own, and only the sight of Anna across the room, steady and watchful, kept the fear from showing plainly on his face. When Silas approached with 2 glasses of wine, offering one to Joseph with a warm smile and a toast to family reunited, Bram stepped forward smoothly and intercepted the exchange, taking both glasses himself. "Allow me the honor," Bram said pleasantly. 18 years of searching deserves a toast from the man who never stopped looking. He raised one glass toward Silas with perfect courtesy. "You first, of course. It would only be right, given how deeply you have longed for your nephew's return." Silas's composure flickered, only for an instant, but it was enough. The room had gone quiet enough that the pause was noticed, several guests turning to watch, and when Silas hesitated a moment too long before reaching for the offered glass, the Duke himself stepped forward, his face suddenly hard in a way Anna had not yet seen from him. "Drink it, Silas," the Duke said quietly. "If there is nothing to fear." The silence that followed stretched unbearably long, every eye in the great hall fixed on Silas, until finally he set the glass down untouched and, with the sudden desperation of a cornered animal, turned to flee toward the terrace doors. He did not get far. Bram's men, positioned discreetly throughout the hall since Anna's warning at dawn, closed around him before he reached the threshold, and the celebration dissolved into chaos and gasped disbelief as the truth of 18 years finally came crashing into the light. In the weeks that followed, Silas was tried and convicted, stripped of every title and comfort he had spent 2 decades quietly accumulating, and sent far from Everholt Park to answer for both the fire at the hunting lodge and the poison he had prepared for the very celebration meant to welcome his nephew home. The Duke, though shaken by the depth of his own brother's betrayal, found in the return of his son a joy strong enough to outweigh even that grief, and the household slowly settled into a new and steadier rhythm. Joseph, now formally acknowledged as Thomas, Marquis of Everholt and heir to the dukedom, struggled at first with a life so different from everything he had known, uncomfortable in grand rooms, uncertain among servants who now bowed to him rather than shared his company as equals. But he found, again and again, that the one steady thing in this new and overwhelming world was Anna, who had never once treated him as anything other than exactly who he was. It was in the gardens of Everholt Park, months later, beneath an arch of climbing roses just beginning to bloom, that he finally asked her the question that had been building quietly between them since the night in the rain when a poor boy had begged a stranger to pretend an embrace to save his life. "I have very little left of the man I used to be," he said, taking both her hands in his. "But I know that whoever I have become, the Duke's son or poor stranger, I do not wish to face any of it without you beside me." Anna, who had once mended curtains in a servant's hall and never imagined standing in gardens such as these, felt no hesitation at all in her answer. "You never needed to pretend with me," she said softly. "Not that first night, and not now." They were married the following spring, in a ceremony attended by villagers and nobility alike, Heir and Keziah and Jocasta seated proudly among the guests, Eloria given a place of honor for the truth she had finally dared to speak. And though the road that brought them together had begun with a desperate stranger's whispered request in the rain, what remained, long after the fear and danger had faded into memory, was something neither of them had ever needed to pretend at all.